educational reform on art teaching. I guess that's pretty much. So I wanted to go back to, well, what do we know about different classes? What do we know about the way students learn and the way children learn and the way we teach? And trying to look, I mean, of course I went to the library databases and did a search on NCLB and learning, NCLB and teaching, NCLB, and they really come up with a lot about assessment. They come up with very little on how does it affect how we teach and how we approach our subjects and how students are learning. So what do we know about student learning? We know that music and spatial task performances, in an article called Music and Spatial Task Performances, a causal relationship, music lessons, even listening to music can enhance spatial reasoning. We know that music can enhance how we think. We know classical music can stimulate sensory memory when we're taking tests and when we're studying, but try to find a music class required in the state of Pennsylvania and you will not find it. So we know that there's an absolute relationship between music and learning, and we get rid of it. And we also know that critical brain function, the spatial reasoning necessary for critical brain functioning in complex mathematics. So once you're moving beyond arithmetic into plane geometry, trigonometry, calculus, that there's an absolute relationship between music and math. Math was kept, music was eliminated. We also know that studying music strengthens students' academic performance, and this is in the state of Rhode Island, indicates that sequential skill-building instruction in art and music, meaning you just don't take a music appreciation class, but you're learning how to read a musical scale, you're learning about treble versus bass clef, you're learning to play an instrument, and there's a systematic approach to teaching music or a systematic approach to teaching drawing, painting, and graphic arts will help you with reading and math later in life. Again, we get rid of music and graphic arts. Students' involvement in extracurricular or co-curricular activities makes students more resilient and resisting peer pressure when it comes to drug use, dropping out of school, dropping classes, skipping classes, cutting. And in a statewide survey of Texas schools, students who participated in band, orchestra, or choir have the lowest level of substance abuse of any body of students that we have ever studied. Again, we're going to cut music. So, U.S. Department of Education recommends the arts to college-bound middle and junior high school students, because a lot of colleges, and here in Mount Aloysius we actually have Vox Nova. We give a scholarship for Vox Nova. I'm on the Mercy Scholarship Committee, and when you come in, being in choir and band are actually the equivalent of being on sport. So if you have music performance or basketball, it's all the same to me, because they're both very labor-intensive, time-intensive activities. But we do know that arts education helps develop a child's intellectual development. 1 year of visual and performing arts is required. It used to be required in the state of Pennsylvania way back when we had cars that got 7 miles to the gallon. We had to take music or art in high school for 1 semester. Again, my niece, this is anecdotal, but the school district my niece is in, she was in band, she was in choir. Going into 7th grade, they said you can take one, either band or choir, but you can't take both. And she said, but I really like both. No, you can't do it. There's no time in the schedule to do it. So now that she's going into high school, she had to choose between, she wanted to do vocational CAD/CAM operation, and they said, well, if you do that and you go to VOTEC, you can't take choir or band, because that class meets while you're at VOTEC. So she's being squeezed out of those classes. And I think this is increasingly happening. Students who take music performance classes and music appreciation score higher on SATs than students who don't take science or don't take music and don't take art. Music performance 53 points higher on verbal, 39 points higher on math. So we're seeing clear evidence coming out of a lot of these programs. A grounding in art will help our students to see, to bring a uniquely human experience to science and technology. Creative, Scientists are also creative, artistic performers. A lot of science majors who go on for PhDs are also musical performance or art performance people. So they paint, they sing, they perform music. I know Marilee quilts, which is actually an artistic expression. Arts education. No, I think it's, because it
no, I meant you haven't seen my work.
Well, but it taps into a different part of your brain, so you're actually are using both sides of your brain, and it actually helps us think more creatively. Arts education aids students in the workplace. They become better problem solvers. They have a better ability to communicate. They have a more engaged attitude, which is, I don't know how you measure an engaged attitude, but they have a more engaged attitude. They're more flexible when it comes to working in groups, that they become group leaders and decision makers, that they can actually bring people to a consensus easier. And they help to strive for excellence. Music is beating computers and enhancing early childhood educational development. Music training, specifically piano instruction, is far superior to computer instruction at the lower grades. So if we took the keyboards out of the kindergarten and put piano keyboards in the kindergartens, we might actually have better computer programmers in the long run, because they're looking at a systematic approach to something. I actually still advocate for teaching flow charting and programming, but some people disagree with me on that. Teacher expertise in music is a critical factor in student learning. Right, so I'm beating kind of a dead horse. Students who study art are four times more likely to be recognized for academic achievement and 3 times more likely to be awarded for school attendance. I know when I was in band, if we weren't in school on Thursday and Friday, we weren't allowed to perform on Friday night at the football game. So we didn't miss Friday classes, which is the highest cut day in school, other than Deer Day in Pennsylvania. So, music and art education programs are mandatory in countries that rank higher than us consistently when we're looking at our K-12 students. Japan, Hungary, and the Netherlands. Finland, which is now the world's benchmark for science and math testing, their students have mandatory art education all through school. So you can pick an art, you can do drawing, you can do painting, you can do music, but you pick an art and you study that systematically through school. No Child Left Behind mandates the arts. They mandate that you take 1 semester of art in your 4 years of high school, or a foreign language. So it's not systematic, it's that you take it one time, it's kind of a one-off thing. And the arts are considered core academic subjects. Art, music, foreign language is included. Sign language is actually included in some school districts in Pennsylvania as a foreign language. So all of those are incorporated. And studies have shown that 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students who are taught a foreign language outperform students who are not exposed to a foreign language on their basic skills tests in Pennsylvania for language skills. I tell my students a lot, I did not learn English in English class, much to the chagrin of all of my English teachers. I didn't learn it in language arts. When I was in 9th grade and my German teacher said, what is a verb? And I said, a verb is an action word. And she said, find the verb in the sentence. And I'm like, I have no idea where the verb is in the sentence, but I can define verb for you. That's where my real understanding of language started, was when I had to use it in another context. And so what they're really seeing is in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and why we know this is the first PSSA test is given to 3rd graders. So we know 3rd grade PSSA testing, we can look at the students who have second language skills and are exposed to learning a foreign language outperform students who are not exposed to a foreign language at home or in school. And nearly all schools in America offer coursework in languages. The amount of instruction does not come close to the amount of instruction in math, science, and English. And I could easily turn this into those darn sciences are taking over, because when I was in North Carolina, I participated in a study that looked at how many minutes a week are the benchmark year classes being taught science, math, and social studies. Benchmark classes. In North Carolina, we benchmark students in 4th and 8th grade, and an 11th grade. And you had to pass the 11th grade test to get a diploma in the state of North Carolina. Benchmark classes were math, science, and written English. Social studies, the arts, languages were excluded from those tests. So we had an end of course test that you had to pass to go on. Math and science had benchmarks, and if you didn't meet the benchmark, you couldn't go on to the next level of school, essentially. When I left North Carolina in 2006, average elementary social studies instruction was 30 minutes a week. So they were for an entire week of school, you got 30 minutes that included history, government, civics, geography, political science, sociology, and psychology. At the high school level, you had a guaranteed 1 semester of social studies every year. But I could have a student coming to college who took U.S. history first block, first semester, 10th grade year, and did not have another history class until they took my history class, which could be 3 or 4 years later. So we do know that things are shifting. Federal funding for the arts and humanities is about $250 million a year. National Science Foundation, public school funding, is about $5 billion a year. So there's a little bit of a disparity between how we support the sciences and how we support other things. Music and theater correlate to math and reading. Right? So what does this mean for No Child Left Behind, national standards, educational reform, and college teaching? Because that's, I've got 18 minutes to talk about that. The article that I handed out is written by a retired, he won the National Teacher of the Year Award several years ago. He was a high school teacher, and he published this in Academy, which is the official publication of the American Association of University Professors, the AAUP, and it was reprinted in the Washington Post, and he's basically warning us what's going to happen in high school classes because of No Child Left Behind. He says, really, I want to warn you, because you are going to get students who have been in school for 12 years under No Child Left Behind. This is the 12th anniversary of No Child Left Behind. This is the 12th year of state testing. But for us, because state testing starts in 3rd grade, last year's freshmen, this year's sophomores, were the first 3rd graders tested under No Child Left Behind. And they have been tested to death throughout their entire K-12 system. So you probably in the last 2 years have noticed a huge difference in your freshmen and sophomores versus your seniors and how they approach their subjects. And I think in history, political science, as we talk about our students, we see this huge gap between students who want to know the answer versus students who want to know how do they find an answer. And in history, I tell students this all the time, history is about gray area. Yes, there are some facts you have to know. July 4th, 1776 is a fact you should know, but knowing that fact by itself does not tell you anything about history. It tells you about that fact. It's like knowing I can define mitosis, but if I don't know what to do with it and how it connects to DNA and RNA and what's going on, I know nothing about biology. The problem is in social studies, we pretty much stop with the definition in high school, and so students get the impression that it's just about the definitions. In biology, they're supposed to go further, but I think they're still kind of stalled at that. We know the facts, and I'm feeling more and more like Joe Friday in Dragnet, just the facts, folks, because the facts are easy to grade. And we can say, well, we know the facts, and by knowing the facts, we have educated our students, and the high schools have done their jobs. And I'm not criticizing the high schools. They live within an environment that they were given with people telling them, if you want money, this is what we're going to do. And if you don't want money, if you don't want a raise, go ahead and continue to teach the way you used to, but we're not going to give you money, we're not going to give you a raise, and we probably won't let you keep your job. So the question is, how did we get to this situation, and what do we do about it? And I really kind of wish I had somebody in nursing here, because North Carolina, and I know North Carolina and South Dakota's systems really, really well, because it is a state unified system. They are much more unified at the state level than Pennsylvania is. because we still have some autonomy at the local level in Pennsylvania. North Carolina has this thing called lateral entry teachers. If you have a college diploma in anything, you can go to North Carolina Public Schools and say, hey, I notice you have a job opening here. I would like to teach. You could be a you could be a general science major and say, I want to teach physics because I've got a science diploma from Mount Aloysius College. I've never taken an education class in my life. I don't know how to write a lesson plan. Will you hire me? And the state of North Carolina would say, sure. In 3 years, you have to have your license. And that means you have to take some classes. You don't have to student teach. What they did is they hired you as a long-term sub, paid you, and then paid you to go to school, but you didn't have to student teach. Someone came in once a semester and observed you and said what you were doing. It works if you have an emergency shortage and somebody kind of knows the subject, but they really don't know how to teach. And I was at dinner my first year in North Carolina with a group of physicians, and they all said, I'm thinking about going back and being a teacher because, I've got an MD and I really know physics, I really know biology, I really know chemistry. I think I should be a high school teacher because I've been in a high school and I know what it's like. And I said, you know what? I go to the doctor every year and I get a physical. And every 6 months when I get a sore throat and I get penicillin, I go back to the doctor. I go at least twice a year. Maybe I should be a lateral entry MD because I've sat in a waiting room, I have old magazines at home, I can be a doctor. And they looked at me and they said, do you know how insulting that is? I went to college for a long time. I studied very hard. This is a profession. And I said, and what makes you think teaching isn't? Just because you know your subject doesn't mean you know how to teach it. And just because you know your subject and you know something about teaching doesn't mean you can teach a 9th grade class who just got out of gym class and it's spring, not today, and the sun is out and the flowers are blooming and all the pheromones in the boys are stinking and the girls are coming in and everyone's spraying each other with Axe and you have 2 hours you have to hold them in class and keep their attention. What are you going to do? They're like, well, that would never happen. I said, really? Because it just happened last week to me, so tell me what I'm supposed to do. So this is our situation. No Child Left Behind, in some ways, was an indication that politicians who are not teachers did not trust what teachers were doing in the classroom to a new generation of students who really didn't understand what it was to be educated. At a time when every paradigm in American society is changing. How we access education or information started to change with computers, so I don't have to go to the library. Knowing history meant there's a timeline at ushistory.net, and I can go get the timeline so I know history. And if I really want mitosis, it's right there on PBS. I can just go get that lecture so I know it. Why do I have to go to school? Why do I have to think deeply and read broadly and understand and make connections? And what function does the teacher have anymore? So we do have very bright students, and I am not maligning the students, because our students know things that I do not know. I looked at the 8th grade math PSSA test last night, and there's plane geometry on there. I took plane geometry in 10th grade, and I'm still trying to get an improved grade in plane geometry. I just don't think that way. But they are smarter in some ways than I am in what tests they can take. And man, they are really good at taking tests. But when I say, I want you to go to the library, and I want you to find 2 articles that disagree with each other about one topic, they're like, well, what's the topic? I don't care. You pick the topic. Well, what journal should I use? A refereed journal that's critically analyzed. But which is the right journal to find? I don't know what the right journal is. There's lots of journals. Go find one. How do I know when I found the right article? If it's right for you, it's right for me. You're going to make an argument about this. And then I thought, am I asking too much? When I was a freshman in college, my freshman comp teacher said, go read the Times on the day you were born and write a 500-page or 500-word reflection on what happened the day you were born. I'm from northwestern Pennsylvania. The Times to me was Time magazine, which is published for the week. I didn't know about the New York Times, and I got an F on the assignment because I got the wrong I got the Times, I read Time magazine, I looked for what happened on the day I was born. It covered the whole week, and nothing really exciting happened on March 6, 1962, except I was born, and it will be a national holiday. But because nothing had happened and I couldn't find it, and I didn't know what Times was, I failed. And I sucked it up, and I said, how do I do better? And he said, if you don't know, next time ask a question. Oh, okay. Lesson learned. Next time I asked a question. Our students they're paralyzed at first because we have always said every question has one right answer, and if we don't believe that, look at the PSSAs. There's multiple choice answers, and every question has one right answer. And if you teach in a field where there is not one right answer, looking around, we all teach in a field where there is not one right answer. I mean, occasionally there is, but frequently there isn't. We want students to be critical thinkers, and our students are coming to us ill-prepared for critical thinking. That means it's our job to teach critical thinking. They are ill-prepared for rigorous reading. They have some vocabulary skills that are impressive because they have to have those to pass the English PSSAs. What they don't have, and I had a whole class on this, is Latin prefixes and suffixes. Didn't have a Latin class. I had a vocabulary class in 10th grade on prefixes and suffixes. So I can figure out what the word means from context. Our students look at you like, I can't pronounce it and I don't know what context means, and I don't know that ante means before, but I do know antebellum means before the war because you told us in class that ante in this word means before. I said it means before in every word that you see it in. But you didn't tell us that, so we didn't know it. And so now I say, every time you see this in a prefix, it means before. Oh, okay. You know, you can see the penny drop, but you really do have to do a lot of hand-holding to get there. And they're really not ready to work independently. This is my 20th year of college teaching as a, PhD, which means I'm old. So 20 years ago, when I gave an assignment and I said you're going to work in groups, students would say, I hate working in groups because, Mara Lee's not going to do anything, and Natalie wants to boss us all around. And, there's not going to be anything left for me to do, and then Natalie's going to say, Julie, you talk, because you talk. And then I'm like, but I don't know what I'm talking about because they did all the work, and I'm going to get a bad grade. And that's what I used to hear. Now when I say you have to write a 15-page paper, can we do this in groups? Because we work really well in groups, because group work is really good. It's because that's what you've been trained to do for 12 years, is group work, and now we have to get you to think a little more independently and a little more creatively. So, big takeaway, we have to change how we approach our teaching, and we have to adapt how our students learn. And that's kind of the bottom line, is to meet the students where they're at and then modify what we're doing to bring them to where we want them to be by the end of the course, by the end of their sophomore year, by the end of graduation. So how do we do that becomes the challenge. So does anyone want to look at what a PSSA text looks like? Because if you go to this is actually sample tests that have been released. These are available for anyone to look at. And what grade? He's in third grade?
He's in fifth.
He's in fifth?
Grade, yeah.
So what is he
doing
taking?
reading today. Yeah.
What did they do yesterday that they had 26 problems?
I think it's the math, but I'm not 100% sure. It was all...
This also gives us the answers. So if you don't know how to, I'm not going to give, this is not a math test. Okay. So this is... These are highly, these are very secret tests that we're looking at, and in fact they are so secret. We have a student teacher who's out there right now, and his job, he's monitoring tests, and I said, what are you doing? Because you're monitoring tests, what are you doing? He's like, I have a desk in front of the bathroom. I said, you what? Only one child is allowed in the bathroom at a time, so they don't talk about the test while they're taking it. And his job is to ensure that only one student is in the bathroom at a time.
And he has a rifle, too.
Well, he's a big guy, so I think he can probably, throw him down. This is, explaining the test, explaining the scoring. This is fifth fifth grade, so this is what they're doing. They're looking for 5 categories: numbers and operation, measurement, geometry, algebraic concepts, data analysis, and probability, which is what we expect our 5th graders to know. Now, I can tell you, when I was in 5th grade math, I was in pre-algebra, and we made tessellation graphic design things. You know, pyramids with, you know, pyramids in them that were optical illusions. I don't remember doing any probability in 5th grade. I mean, my probability was, probably I'll go to class today. You know, so, and they actually, this is the grade 5 ruler. This is the official ruler that you can use on the test. So, now, hopefully some of these look like, oh, I can answer these, right? But it's 5th graders. So, okay, long division. Did they even teach long division? Manual long division? Okay, good. Because we don't have math education, so I don't really know what they. And you're doing estimations. They are not allowed to use a calculator, so this is all hand calculated. So some of it is, it's just, can you figure out a math problem? And